then snatch him up and plant him right there on the campus.
Afraid of my information.
They're afraid of you.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
you
I
know
tell the
something?
truth.
Well, I just like to listen to you tell the truth.
Thank you.
And then there's nothing like just having a good old homegrown activist. And that's Sturge Moreland. He's a Detroiter. He's a business owner. He's a husband and a dad. And he gets very, very involved. And sometimes he gets very worked up. He gets very worked up. They've taken him off of Facebook 2 or 3 times. He doesn't know why, because there's worse things than what he says. But whenever you start talking about race, people get a little upset. Why is that, Michael Imhotep?
Well, if you talk about, once again, thanks for having me on again, Charlene. So what I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard it before, disagree with it, does not mean it's not true. Just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. So if we understand why some people get uptight when we talk about white supremacy and racism, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, contrary to what you hear on MSNBC or CNN. And I watch between 6 to 10 hours of MSNBC a day, including today. When they talk about racism, they usually never define it from a historical perspective. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to education, access to opportunity, healthcare, etc., media, and they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. The reason why people don't want to have a conversation about racism, the problem is not race. Race is the stratification of humanity based upon characteristics and regions. They don't want to have a conversation about racism, because if you have a conversation about racism, then you have to talk about white supremacy. You talk about white supremacy, you have to talk about unearned benefits, which is white privilege. And then you have to talk about how Europeans got so wealthy, how they acquired what they had when in the dark ages, in the medieval time, they didn't acquire this land, this resources. So then you start unraveling the truth. Okay. And this is a real conversation that many people, not all white people, but many people don't want to have.
Why are they so afraid of the truth, Michael?
Because once the truth comes out, then you have to deal with the theft of 2.3 billion acres of land from Native Americans and indigenous African people, because African people have been in this land we call the United States of America going back at least 51,700 years. We're talking about the Khoisan, who are the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They come from Southern Africa. They have the oldest DNA on the planet. And if you read the book from a friend of mine, Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, his book thoroughly documents 13 different disciplines, thoroughly documented African presence in Allendale County, South Carolina, going back at least 51,700 years ago, before Native Americans came into existence.
Okay, well, let's move into 2017, 2018,
right.
Moving forward, the stuff that we're seeing happening on the streets of America.
Right. Well, the stuff that we're seeing has a historical foundation. Okay, it has a historical foundation coming out of slavery, 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation. It comes from a dehumanization of African people, but not just a dehumanization, not just a over-policing. We know the modern day police department comes out of the slave patrols. Okay, this is not an attack on police officers who good police officers who do their job. We have to understand the origins of this. Okay, this also deals with the maldistribution of wealth, power, and resources. For instance, if we look at the Homestead Act of 1862, that has a direct impact on the maldistribution of wealth today and why African Americans control 1.2% of the wealth. The Homestead Act of 1862, during the second year of the Civil War, distributed 250 million acres of land to white people, to peasants coming from Europe. And this was from 1862 up until 1976.
And we still don't have our 40 acres and a mule.
We don't have our 40 acres and a mule, which was General Order number 15 by General William T. Sherman in January of 1865. And that was temporary. That was for the coastal land in Georgia and South Carolina. So you got about 40,000 African Americans who settled there and about 400,000 acres of land. But most of that land is going to be taken back away from us. So we don't understand this history to even understand really what to fight for. We get sidetracked with fighting for civil rights. Yes,
history.
We can correct the effect of
it. How do we correct it? How do we do that? And what do we do moving forward? I think, I have this conversation all the time, and I think everybody's concerned. People that I know are concerned. My family's concerned. My friends are concerned.
Sure.
My colleagues are all concerned, but we don't know what to do.
Sure.
I mean, and I think it's because we're so used to waiting for a leader. Well, you can't just wait for a leader.
Well, that's my side complex.
The so-called leaders in this city Many of them have been, bought and paid for
Right.
by the, so many corporations that write a big check and then they can't speak up.
Right.
So what are we waiting for? And what do we do? Do we march? People say marching does nothing. Do we riot? What does riot do? It burns down black neighborhoods. I mean, what do we do?
Okay. The first thing we have to
How do we
do.
address what's happening right now today? And what do you tell your children?
Okay, first thing we have to do is we have to understand that a people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future. If you don't understand your history and how you got into the predicament you're in, you don't know which direction to go or what you should be fighting for. Number one. Number two, we need to study Dr. King and Malcolm X. The reason why is because many people and I'm all for mass protests. Mass protests have their purpose. Okay, the purpose of mass protests is draw attention to a problem, to galvanize support around the problem, to draw people into your plan, into your strategy, so you can implement the strategy. Okay, marching is not the plan. Marching is a tactic of an overall larger plan. All right, but we don't understand its history. So one of the mistakes that people make is that we try to choose between Malcolm X and Dr. King. What people don't understand is that July 31st, 1963, while Malcolm X was still in the Nation of Islam, Malcolm sent a letter to Dr. King requesting a meeting. Malcolm was calling for a unification of the civil rights leaders. He said, we've got to find a common solution to a common problem posed by a common enemy. Okay. And when Malcolm meets Dr. King March 26, 1964, at their first and only meeting at the U.S. Senate debate in 1964 for the Civil Rights Act, Malcolm tells Dr. King, I'm throwing all of my effort into the civil rights movement. Okay, this is later in the same month when Malcolm officially separates for the Nation of Islam, which is March 8th, 1964. So we have to understand that history. We got to understand that your history and culture influences your economic empowerment and political empowerment. A lot of this stuff could have been avoided if more African Americans had voted to stop Donald Trump. I'm just gonna keep it real with you.
Keep
a lot
it
of this
real,
stuff,
keep it
a lot of this
real.
stuff. See, if you know how to count, you don't have to be a mathematician, but if you know how to count, you realize we were bamboozled. So let me ask you a question. How many African Americans were registered to vote in the 2016 election? Do you know?
I don't have the numbers.
16.4 million. I got the numbers. Pew Research Center. People, you got it. Look, I was in Atlanta this past
That's
weekend.
registered, not the ones who voted.
You registered to vote.
Registered.
I'm gonna come to that in just a minute.
Okay.
16.4 million registered to vote. All right. I was in Atlanta this past weekend at the 3-day Juneteenth celebration in Atlanta, Mosley Park, and I did 2 presentations there. When I asked people this question, nobody knew. It's a year and a half later. We still don't understand what happened. 16.4 million African Americans registered to vote. Only 59% voted. 59% voted. This was a 7 percentage point drop from 2012 when a record percentage of African Americans voted because President Obama was on the ballot. 66% voted. 2013, what happened? Supreme Court decision, Shelby County versus Holder, which struck down Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act that we still don't understand today. And Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, who was a U.S. Senator then from Alabama, who's now the Attorney General, he cheered the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. Okay? See, we got to understand this. So right after this happens, then all these states come out with these new voter ID laws to suppress the vote. 14 new states had voter ID laws. There were 868 fewer places to vote in the 2016 election cycle, and we still don't understand what happened. If your vote did not matter, then tell me why the Republicans worked so hard to suppress your vote. Why did they pass voter suppression laws? Why did they take cases to the U.S. Supreme Court in Ohio? Why did they work so hard to suppress your vote if your vote didn't matter? What happens is Republicans feared our vote, then we valued our vote. Republicans feared our vote, and they still fear our vote. This is why they're implementing voter suppression tactics. The cross-checking system, which was created by Chris Kobach, Secretary of State in Kansas. This is not 1.1 million people off the voter rolls. This is not 54,000 people off the voter rolls right here in Michigan. Trump won Michigan by 10,704 votes.
That's not much.
Trump won, he won by 0.2 of a percentage point. Listen to me. Jill Stein got 50,000 votes out of Michigan. That's 104,000 votes gone. Trump won the key 3 battleground states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, by 78,000 votes. 78,000 votes made the difference between us keeping a lot of policies from President Obama and moving forward and dealing with this nonsense that we're dealing with right now. Most of us don't even understand what happened. So a lot of this can be avoided by understanding our issues and then looking at the candidates and looking at their policies and how their policies lined up with our issues. And when in election day, you got to realize you have the power to fire a lot of these people who've been mistreated.
Well, we're going to talk about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I keep backing up because I want to
Go ahead.
and talk about the kinds of things that are happening now. Serge, you say you've been racial profiled more than once.
Yes.
Give me an example of what has happened to you.
Are you referring to Facebook or just in general?
Just in general.
I've had a number of incidents. I was asked to be on a show earlier. You had asked me about before,
Yes.
and they asked me to only talk about the police profiling me, and I thought it was a larger issue than that. But being racially profiled happens under all kinds of circumstances socially. However, I prefer to talk about what you mentioned earlier, which was being racially profiled on Facebook. I think it kind of ties in with what Mr. Imhotep mentioned. All of these things, all of this behavior has to do with some historical context.
Mm-hmm.
And much of it has to do with controlling the behavior of Black people or the progress of Black people. And it may seem ubiquitous, it may seem unimportant even. For example, if I'm on Facebook and I see a video of a white woman shaking her behind and saying the N-word and calling Black folks N-word, and everybody's looking at the video and saying, what is she talking about? Or they may be talking about how she's built, or that she looks like trash, or trailer park trash, or something like that. One thing they may be missing is that kind of video would normally be taken off of Facebook and be told that doesn't, a person may be told it doesn't meet their community standards. However, if a Black person says something about the video and criticizes it, then that Black person will be removed from Facebook. And what I'm saying is there's a correlation between what a system calls bad, or who has to be punished, and who has to be responded to, who has to be profiled. Sturge Moreland's personal profiling issues are not as important as our profiling issues as a group. And on Facebook, when they remove you, they are saying, you don't belong here and we control you. And to the extent that you are here, we will control what you say, and we will modify your behavior by removing you. And then when they removed me a few times for 30 days, it modified my behavior. So I'm not as quick to.
It's like putting you in the hole if you're in prison, right?
That's right. That's right. You come out and you act different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
you didn't act any different when you came back.
No, I did actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way I act different is some of my Facebook time was spent debating with white folks.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found over time is that it's not productive. They are
Right.
convinced. And
you're not going to change their mind
right,
about anything.
And it serves no practical function.
I mean, there's still. I mean, I have white colleagues, friends, or associates who just say they look at me and they go, "Why do you think that people are still racist? There's no racism," and they are looking at and sounding as sincere as they possibly can
because they don't understand history. This is why.
That's right.
They're
ignorant
of
history.
Believe that. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Let me give you a specific.
Are you kidding me?
Since you asked me a specific racial profile incident. Mm. Now, some people, particularly white folks, they wouldn't necessarily see this as me being racially profiled. But I think I may have mentioned this before. But this just wrapped up in court a month ago. A year and a half ago, my wife does dance for, she owns a dance studio, and she does halftime shows for the Pistons and the Lions and so forth. And we were at a halftime show, and my stepdaughter was part of the entertainment Come On Dance. So at halftime, I stood up to film her. Mm-hmm. Someone hit me in the head with something, right? So I turned around, and there was a sea of white faces. And I said, who hit me? Who threw that? And two white men stood up and started screaming, cursing, and hollering, right? And they were asking me, what are you going to do about it?
And this was where?
At the at Ford Field.
At Ford Field.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So the first thing I think of when these things happen, now that I'm the age I am, is I can see the courtroom. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those men see a black man who they perceive as powerless, mm-hmm. and by himself, right? They kind of see themselves as a gang, sort of. And they also see me in a larger context as being powerless in a system. So no matter what I do, although they're provoking me to violence, they suspect the outcome will be that I'll lose, right? So when they're yelling and cursing at me and calling me names, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? This is to provoke me to violence, right? Now, unfortunately, my wife had just come and took my 3.5-year-old. She was just about to turn 4, and took her to the front of the field.
Little Camille,
right.
Yes.
And so I asked them, did you throw it? And so they're still cursing and screaming and hollering, name calling. And they kept asking me, what are you going to do
And
about it?
did security or nobody ever come and stop them or
I'll
say
get to that.
anything?
And
Wow.
this, I'm responding to your question. When was I racially profiled or what happened? So a young white woman sitting next to them stood up and she said, she cursed first and called me a name. And then she said, I threw it. What are you going to do about it? Like they said. So what I did was I took a picture of it and she smiled. She smiled. I took 2 pictures of it.
Right.
And I walked to the field and got a police officer and I explained to him what happened. He said, that's assault. He said, go get the police and security. Long story short, the police wouldn't come when I told him what happened. Security did come. Security was headed by a black male. And when he saw that it was white female, he changed the situation and tried to put it in her favor by asking me how heavy was the object that hit me in the head.
Gosh.
Long story short, he refused to put her out of the place. She told him that she said she threw it, but that she went on to say she didn't. Long story short, I filed criminal charge. The prosecutor happened to be a young Muslim woman, and she took the case and she charged her with assault, battery, and put a warrant out for her arrest. They arrested a young white woman who was 26 years old. She worked at a doctor's office. In the doctor's office, they put handcuffs on her and put her in jail.
You went all the way with this, didn't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. So at the courtroom, my brother happens to be a lawyer, and he happened to come to the room. And he didn't know I was having that day, and he knew the judge, which was Archer's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, I took the second option, which was not a trial, because I thought it was going to be a white jury and they would let a 26-year-old white woman off. So I took the community service, gave her community service, anger management, and what else was it?
A fine.
A fine and random drug test because she had some DUI.
Oh, okay. And, she might have been drunk that day.
Yeah, well, they were all drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably were drunk. You know?
Right.
So she apologized in court, and she said she was sorry, and she did do it. And I told her in court, I won't use her last name. I said, had my wife not moved my 3-year-old daughter who was sitting next to me, and you had hit her in the head, and the 3 of you asked me, what are you going to do about it? This would be a different trial. And I said this in the courtroom in front of the judge. I said, this would be a different trial.
Right.
3 of you wouldn't be here.
Right.
I'll be the only person in this courtroom.
Right.
And it would be, and a different person would be tried for a different charge.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I want you to know that, how serious that is. I said, I'm not moved or impressed by how loud you and your friends can curse. I said, your friends aren't even in this courtroom with you. So you're here by yourself and you lost.
Right.
And so, of course, that modified her behavior, I'd imagine. So she was put on 9 months of all of this stuff she had to take. And just a week ago or so, she complied, so it was all dropped, right? Although I could have gone to trial. But that's an example of racial profiling. It's a little different in that the white, what I call the white mob or the white gaze, they perceive you negatively, and they believe you are ripe for abuse. And so
is that G-A-Z-E? Gaze. What are you
yeah, G-A-Z-E.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
look at.
Yeah, look
not
at
not sexual preference.
No,
okay.
no,
just so people understand what you're talking about.
Right.
Okay, gazing. Right. Okay.
G-A-Z-E.
Right. Okay.
Meaning
Just so people understand what you're talking about.
Look at, stare
Right.
at,
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, and of course, every black man has been racially profiled by the police. I have stories that people would probably think are not even believable, but most black men do, particularly when it comes to the police. I have stories that you wouldn't believe, when it comes to the police.
I don't know. I know very few black men, and I'm talking about, professional black men, no matter what kind of job they have, who can say that they've never been harassed or profiled by police. I mean, everybody I know has a story. I mean, my family members, they all have stories. It's amazing. This is heavy. Where do we go from here? Every day, this can tend to, I don't know about you guys, if men and women have the same kind of makeup when it comes to, and I'm a news junkie. I was in the television news for many years as a reporter. And so I'm always, people say, well, just don't watch the news. I can't help it. I have to watch the news. I want to know what's going on. I don't like what's going on, but I need to know what's going on. But there are some days where I just go, you know something? I'm going to try to go one day and not hear that man's name. Just one day, if I can go, like on a Sunday, and no, but you have to turn everything off, including the phone. I mean, because he's
Right.
everywhere. He's like, you know, I hear the voice when I'm like, is he in my house? I mean, where is he? I mean, what do you think of Donald Trump? I mean,
what do I think?
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Well, here's the
is
thing.
this man even human?
Well, this is the thing. I warned people about Donald Trump going back to the 2016 election cycle. If people go to my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, I was doing national radio 5 days a week up until April of 2016. You can go listen to audio podcasts on my shows. I have about 850 audio podcasts on my shows going back 8 years. And I warned people then. I told them Donald Trump is a white supremacist. I did fact checking on Donald Trump's statements. I told people that Donald Trump he's not a pathological lie. He's close to it. See, the difference is that when Donald Trump is under oath and deposition, he tells the truth. Okay, so Tim O'Brien, who wrote the book Trump Nation, Trump sued him. And Tim O'Brien had his attorney put Trump under deposition, and they caught Trump in 30 lies. See, when Trump is under deposition, penalty of perjury, Trump tells the truth. Okay, but he's close to it. He knows the difference, but he thinks he's smarter than everybody. He's narcissistic. There was 30.
He's already said he's smarter than most people.
He thinks he's smarter than most people, and that's partly going to be his downfall. He's going to end up like Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was forced to resign from office August 9th, 1974. First sitting U.S. president to resign from office. And if you study Watergate and you study this, number one, this is at least 10 times worse than Watergate. But much worse. But two, this is following right along Watergate, and this is moving much faster than Watergate. This is the 518th day of his presidency. We already have numerous indictments. We have some guilty pleas. So
got
this
a guy in jail that said, "Take off your belt and your wallet." And
Paul Manafort, who was wearing 2 tethers.
And he's like, "What?"
He was wearing 2 what?
He was wearing 2 tethers. He was two ankle bracelets. Paul Manafort. Then he gets popped allegedly trying to engage in witness tampering. Okay, now he's in jail. Okay, he was on house arrest. All right, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay,
I don't think he'll be the last one. Do you?
No, so? No. It's going to be a lot of people.
Who do you think is next?
He's going to. Oh well, I think you're going to have Jared Kushner. I don't know who's going to absolutely.
Jared Kushner,
but Jared Kushner owes Deutsche Bank $285 million. Deutsche Bank is the largest creditor of Donald Trump. Donald Trump owes Deutsche Bank about $300 million. Deutsche Bank had to pay $600 million to the U.S. government because they were caught laundering $10 billion in Russian money. Okay,
I mean,
Preet Bharara, the U.S. attorney
these are money numbers I can't even relate to.
Donald Trump, Preet Bharara, the U.S. attorney in the Southern District there, whose district was Manhattan, he was fired by Donald Trump after Trump asked him November 30th, 2016 to stay on. One of the things Preet Bharara was investigating is possible crimes committed by Deutsche Bank in his district. And he gets fired by Trump after Trump asked him to stay on. So you start putting this all together, and every time you look around a corner, you see a Russian either alive or dead, you start wondering, well, what's going on here? Either there are 159 coincidences with Russians, or there was a conspiracy.
What do you think about us pulling out of the UN thing?
Well, I think the reason why see, Putin is behind a lot of this stuff. Putin wants to ostracize the U.S. from its allies. So here you have Trump, June 8th, okay, before he goes to the G7 conference.
But he showed up late, left early.
He's advocating for Russia to be brought back in to the G7. Russia got kicked out because they annexed Crimea, which violated international law.
Right, they should have been.
They annexed Crimea from the Ukraine. So here you have Trump on that Friday and Saturday openly advocating for Russia to be brought back in, but he never said why Russia was kicked out in the first place. Now, why is that? I've told people before, Donald Trump is the first Russian president of the United States. And in Russia, they call Donald Trump their president. You've been had, you've been took, you've been led astray, run amok. And people thought Jill Stein was going to get them reparations. All right, I tried to tell you. You didn't want to listen. December 2015, at the 10th anniversary of Russia Today TV, Jill Stein was sitting at Vladimir Putin's table. To the right of Vladimir Putin was Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who just so happened to become Donald Trump's national security advisor. I tried to tell y'all.
And on that note, we're going to take a break. Man, you know so much stuff. I can't believe you got so much in your head.
I do research.
Wow, yes.
This is what we do.
And that's why we have you in here, so that you can educate all of us.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
All right. Stand by, guys.
Stay tuned.
Stand by.
Radio. You're listening to Mind Your Business. I'm your host, Charlene Mitchell, and this is a hot show tonight. Really hot
Yes.
show because it's a topic that tends to get people a little hot around the collar. We're talking about racism, racial profiling, the immigration, the separating of children, the stuff that's going on right now. I mean, there's just so many things. It's like, where do you start? Michael Imhotep, who is
Yes.
he's a talk show host here on 910.
Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. The African History Network show.
And he has a huge following on social media.
Yes.
And Sturge Moreland is a community activist and businessman, and he's never one to bite his tongue about what's happening out here in these streets. And we have on the line Bruce. He's one of our callers. And Bruce, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Charlene, Serge, and Mike.
Yes.
Great conversation. And like Mike always puts a historical spin on it, it is true. Look, the concept of race was created by rich white European and American elite who basically raped and pillaged their way up the economic chain. Now the good old boys are sitting back with their arms folded, attempting to live some wholesome lifestyle as if honor and fair play is the soup of the day. Years ago, it was the Indians, the blacks, and Asians. Now it's the Middle Easterners and Mexicans. White people continue to deny power, property, and status to non-white groups, and the Americans are also accustomed of being a part of the privileged majority that they rarely even think about it. I think black people can impact white people to a great degree by working internally instead of working inside out. We work outside in. We're still trying to win them over like the guy that's in steady pursuit of the girl that doesn't want to be bothered.
Mhm.
I like that analogy.
Right.
So I think that what we need to do too is develop a black think tank like the NAACP, not like them, but something that's nationwide.
No, not something like them. No, like they used to be, maybe.
They're a nationwide organization.
Mhm.
Sure.
Every urban center should have one, and we should have one agenda. Black people, to me, in my estimation, haven't suffered enough because we can't even get on one page to save our lives. So we need to have a black urban agenda that spreads across the whole urban centers, and we should take bus loads like the Million Man March to DC, because every time I see a young black kid getting gunned down for no reason, it hurts me.
Right.
So I don't know how other black people feel about it, but it hurts me, it disappoints me, and it makes me feel power.
Right. Right.
I think that the only way that we'll realize that they really don't like it is probably putting us back in bondage. What does it take? So I think that
with the prisons, I mean, we are in bondage.
Oh, we are. We self-check like in basketball. Until we take control of our life and start teaching our babies, that's one way we can impact them directly and socially and economically. You can't go to your oppressor to be your savior. It's like a dog chasing its tail. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So I don't know really what it's going to take for us to wake up.
Okay, well, people are waking up right now. People are waking up right now. People are fighting back across the country.
I think we're realizing that we have to wake up. We can't sit back anymore and say, well, my life is pretty decent. I'm just going to be quiet about it. While we turn on the news every night and seeing our black brothers and sisters being harassed, killed, treated like crap. It's just awful because, I mean, it's them today and it's my kid tomorrow.
Right.
You know, it's me the next day. I mean, all of us have to, we're living in fear.
Right. Well.
And we need to, and we always want to prop the Jews up. A Jew wouldn't send his children to be taught by a Nazi. We are brag about sending our kids to Grand Cranbrook, West Bloomfield. You see how the young boy got harassed out in West Bloomfield. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You can't go to your oppressor to be your savior. We need to start teaching our babies, because even outside of the math and sciences, their educational system is not good for us. We get a quality education by default. Oh, if we talk our little black babies in the classroom with them, we'll get them too. We need to teach our kids.
Right,
Oh,
right.
absolutely.
Well, at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, they have a freedom school. Visit theright.org, theright.org, WRIGHT.
Could you give us
The
some
right,
details about the
the
freedom school?
right that I'm
Yeah.
not involved in it. I've heard a little
Okay.
bit about it.
You
So
have made some excellent points. Keep listening, keep calling. Try to bring you a lot of good information. Usually I don't have shows that are volatile like this. I don't like to get all worked up between 9 and 11. Otherwise, I'm up till 4 in the morning. But I think that, we all need a wake-up call. I need a wake-up call. I've been on edge for the
right,
last couple of weeks, just watching the news and taking some time out to think, like, what is this? How's this affecting me? How's it
right,
affecting? And I talk to my friends, and everybody's been a little off kilter because we're like, are you feeling this too? Are you feeling this? We're all feeling like
right,
something's getting ready to happen, and it ain't good. It
right.
doesn't feel good right now.
Something's right around the corner.
Yeah, it's like,
Exactly.
yeah, it's like, you're looking over your shoulder. There's a funny smell in the air.
Right.
And his name is Trump.
Right, right. Well, like I said before the break, I warned people about Trump. Trump is the poster boy for white privilege because only a wealthy white male, a perceived wealthy white male, could be this ignorant and become the first Russian president of the United States. But if we look at some documented evidence of people fighting back, and people can copy this across the country, okay? First of all, if we look at why Bill O'Reilly on Fox News is not on the air anymore. The O'Reilly factor. This was the #1 rated cable news program for 11 years.
Can I tell you something? I don't want to break your chain of
Go
thought.
ahead.
When you say Bill O'Reilly,
Yeah.
ooh, I get really upset.
you
I
work
worked
with him?
with Bill O'Reilly in
Right.
Boston.
Right.
I was there first
Right.
before he came. He was a newspaper reporter.
Okay.
They hired Bill O'Reilly because he was a very popular right-wing, print journalist. And there were 3 or 4 of us, black reporters in the newsroom. And every morning when he would walk in and make his grand entrance, because he thought he was all of that,
Right.
and everybody, hey, Bill, hi. We'd say he never spoke to any of the black people. He did not talk to us.
Right.
And this is a million years ago. Okay.
Right.
This is back in, the end of the 70s and early 80s. He did not, the 80s, he didn't talk to us.
Right.
And so every morning when he'd come in and walk past my cubicle, I said, hey, Bill, good morning. How you doing? And I'd do it on purpose so that everybody around could hear me speak to him, and he wouldn't even turn his head. No. So he didn't just become like that when he
Right.
got to be a big shot at CNN.
Well, he's a white supremacist.
Yes,
he's
he
a white.
is.
Now let's deal
Yes,
with why. Let's deal with why Bill O'Reilly is not on the air anymore. Okay, people want to talk about what can you do. It's because organizations, African American organizations like Color of Change, colorofchange.org, they had a campaign to put pressure on advertisers of Bill O'Reilly's show.
Yes.
They got about 325,000 online signatures. They contacted dozens of Bill O'Reilly's advertisers, and 80 advertisers, 80 white corporations pulled their advertising dollars from Bill O'Reilly's show. And then and then they read with other organizations, and it got to the point where his show was no longer profitable for Fox News, and they fired him. This was after the New York Times exposed that Bill O'Reilly and Fox News paid $13 million to 5 women who alleged sexual harassment. Okay.
What was he making a year?
That ran Fox News.
Say again?
Fox News. I mean, he was thrown out.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
It was a trickle effect.
Exactly. He was thrown out. He was a good friend of Donald Trump. Okay. And Bill O'Reilly was a good friend of Donald Trump as well. I forgot how many millions of dollars.
And Bill O'Reilly was making how much a year at that point?
I forgot exactly how much.
Like 13 million,
something like that,
or
maybe even more.
Huge money.
I think it's even more than that. But people need to read that,
and
because see, this deals with redistributing the pain. And if you listen to Dr. King's last speech, April 3rd, 1968, I've been to the mountaintop. Don't just listen to the last 2 minutes that they show you on the television every Dr. King day. Listen to the full, is about 43, 45 minutes. Okay, because Dr. King left a blueprint, and he talked about. He told them to go out and boycott Wonder Bread and Heart's Bread and Coca-Cola and Seal Test milk. And he said that we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. He said we have to always, he said this in the speech. The speech is on YouTube. He said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. Before the break, you talked about marching. What he's saying is that when you have marches and mass protests, you also have to have targeted, sustained economic withdrawal programs, economic boycotts, to put pressure on your target so that you can then push your agenda.
A march all by itself does not accomplish much.
It wears out your shoes. You may get some exercise.
There was a march, a march this week in Detroit, the Poor People's March. 23 people got arrested. They said they were disrupting the queue line. I don't know what came out of the march.
Right. Well. This is about that deals with gentrification and protecting America, protecting Detroit for white gentrifiers. That's what that's about. If we look at understanding how to leverage your dollars, your history and culture gives you your values, your interests, and your principles, your VIPs. It influences your economic empowerment and political empowerment. We have to understand, we have to stop financing our own dehumanization. Many people are invested in privatized prisons right now and don't know it. It's through your 401k plan and it's through your pension fund plan. I'm not against 401k plans. I'm not against pension fund plans.
We don't always know what they do with your money.
Well, you can call your benefits manager and find out. Okay, if we look at what happened in June of 2017 in the city of New York, we saw that city employees in the city of New York, not just African Americans, but city employees in the city of New York, found out they were investing in privatized prisons. Core Civic, which is the largest owner-operator of privatized prisons, used to be Corrections Corporation of America. They are publicly traded stock, New York Stock Exchange, the symbol CXW. You can follow them. And also Geo Group, which used to be Wackenhut. These people withdrew $48 million of their pension fund dollars from these two privatized prisons because they said you may have privatized prisons, but you're not going to do it with our money. They redistributed the pain.
And who did that withdrawal?
These was the city employees of the city of New York. They withdrew $48 million.
Through their 401k plans.
No, pension fund. $48 million of the pension fund. Read this article from New York Daily News. NYC pension fund to back out of investments in private prisons. When you research this, you find out this is something they actually did. NYC pension fund to back out of investments in private prisons. And on Politics Nation on MSNBC, Reverend Al Sharpton interviewed one of the guys who was central to making this happen. So these are examples of people redistributing the pain and fighting back. We have to understand we have to stop financing our own dehumanization. Also, many people are invested in gun manufacturers and don't know it as well through their pension fund plans and through their 401k plans. You could call your benefits manager at your job and find out where your dollars are invested. We saw the teachers in California back in 2012 who found out that they had millions of dollars invested in 3 gun manufacturers. We saw they withdrew money.
Mr.
Yes.
I would imagine many people weren't even aware that they could call someone who's a benefits manager.
Exactly. Benefits manager. And the other thing we have to do, and Reverend Al Sharpton is talking about this on his show, Keeping It Real, which is here on 9:10 a.m. Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. He talked to an African-American union, if I remember correctly, and they had 114 financial managers that handle their money, their stock plans, things like this. Out of 114 financial managers, only one was Black. The union's like 80% Black. He said, wait a second. He said, this is your money. He said, you can determine who handles your money. Because one of the things he's saying is like when we have these jobs that we work at and we have 401k plans and pension fund plans, we need to have more Black financial managers that handle the money, that invest the money. Okay? This is redistributing the pain. All right. So we have to understand this. If we look at also, it's not just where we spend our dollars, which is important, is where we invest our dollars, but also the TV shows we watch. So in 2014, you had the TV show on VH1 called Sorority Sisters, okay? And Sorority Sisters was a very degrading show, and many African-American sororities started negatively depicted them, right? So what happened? Why isn't that show on the air anymore? Because African-American organizations put pressure on 19 advertisers. And these advertisers withdrew economic support because we leveraged our dollars and we really redistributed the pain because we realized we can't finance our own dehumanization. We need to do the same thing and have economic withdrawal of corporations that put out negative corporate hip hop that degrade us and call us N-words and B's and everything on a daily basis. So then when we try to get our issues addressed, we are dehumanized because the images that are projected by white corporations dehumanize us on a daily basis. And these dehumanized images are exported around the world.
I'd like to comment.
Go ahead.
You said exported around the world. I want the audience to realize something.
And this is Sturge Moreland speaking.
1979, I'm a singer, right? I had started traveling to sing. And the first time I went outside the country was to Australia and New Zealand. And I was there for 3 weeks singing with a 50-piece choir and a 50-piece orchestra. And I was one of 12 Blacks from Detroit that went with the group. And you may or may not be aware that Australia at the time had something called the white policy. It was very similar to apartheid. and the Aboriginals there were the people who were targets, right?
Right.
So when I got there, I was partnered with 5 different white families to stay at their house. I was the only person in the book that didn't have a photo. I didn't make it to the photo shoot. So the white families that met me, the first white family that met me at the airport were the Dreesens, and they didn't know what I looked like. So when I came down the escalator, I saw my sign. They had a sign that said Sturge, and I walked up and said, "My name's Sturge." And they said, "Yo, Sturge." You know, they had this accent, right? And they said, "Oh, we I said, "You what?" we didn't see your picture. I said, "And you know." And so, anyways, I went to
They
their
were a little
house.
surprised, right?
Right, they're real surprised. So what I found out while I was there is that as we sang from place to place and got on ferries and sang here and there and at malls, that white folks quite often were very hostile towards the black people in the choir as we performing at malls and so forth. And I only saw Aboriginals from time to time who were in the city, and they were always put on the outskirts. And a couple of families explained to me that they had particular, very specific notions about people of color, and particularly black people.
Right.
And the Dreesens, the first time I stayed at their house, we were having dinner, and they were very upfront people. And that, I really did respect that about them. They told me just how they felt and why and so forth. And they said that they had really negative impressions of black people. And I asked them, did they know any black people? They said, no, we don't know any black people. I said, well, why do you have negative impressions of black people? And they said, well, we only can go by what the news tells us. And that's
what they see.
That's right, and it's what you see and what you
Right.
what you consume.
Right. Exactly.
And so they're consuming what's called news, you know, from the television, as Mr. Imhotep said.
Right.
And so I asked them, well, what do you think about me? He said, well, you seem to be a nice
You're
fella.
a nice guy.
You seem to be a nice fella, you know. I said, would it occur to you that there are many other nice fellas and women like me? He said, yeah, well, that makes sense. And I remember the mother, Miss Dreesen, saying that, you know, Judge, we really can't help it. You know, I said, you know, Miss Dreesen, you really can help it. And the reason I bring this up is that I've been a number of places around the world. This is chronic. This is global.
White supremacy is a global system.
White supremacy is everywhere.
Yes.
And wherever I've been, I've run into it. And people don't have to know. You know, they can see me walking down the street in Germany. They can see me in Switzerland. They can see, it doesn't matter where they see me walking down the street. Somebody has to say something, you know. And I took my wife and kids to, I sang in Wales, England last year. And the opportunity was such that I could bring them. This was the first time I brought my family with me. I was singing. So we're walking down the street. And
Sharon?
yeah, no, he's
got a break. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
your story.
You
just remember that you were walking down the street in Wales, okay? Your English trip. We will be right back with Michael Imhotep and Sturge Moreland talking about racism in the world and in America. WFDF. We very serious topic tonight. We're talking about racism, racial profiling, the terrible immigration policies we're going to talk about in a few minutes, about snatching babies from their moms and separating families because these are brown people from different parts of the world that apparently
and African immigrants also.
African immigrant,
Yes.
certain folks like 45, Jeff Sessions, they don't
Mhm.
want them here.
Stephen
And they're
Miller.
making it very clear that they don't want them here.
Mhm.
We have a phone a caller on the line right now. Tony. Hey, Tony, how you doing?
I'm good. Hi, Charlene. Hi, Michael. Hi, Serge.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. You know what? We fail to realize that, like the supremacist global society realizes that we are the majority of people on the planet, and we always have been, and we always will be, because every indigenous people is Black on every continent. Dr. Ivan Van Sertima
Mhm.
and Wayne Chandler, they all wrote about it. We don't know that, Michael. And the thing about the racist immigration laws is they want to keep the U.S. population majority white. So they will let Cubans in, white Cubans in,
Mhm.
and other people in, so the population of white people will stay the same because they have a zero birth rate.
Right.
now.
Right. And about half the states in the U.S. Yeah, they have a declining birth rate.
That's right. So that creates fear, and they want to do everything they can, Black, brown people, to basically. I just want to say it. I'm just saying this is genocidal practices that are being performed on every level, from GMO foods, from mass incarceration. I mean, it's just strategic and so out there in your face.
Right. Right. Yeah. We're dealing with a system of white supremacy and racism. We don't understand what it is and how it works.
And Tony, do you feel? I mean, and lately, I don't want to say lately because I mean, none of this is new, but it just seems like it's intensified. Do you hear more people talking about, their feelings and how this is so depressing?
Absolutely.
People are worried.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're worried about your children, especially in the future generations. What in the heck are they going to face?
Absolutely. It has intensified, and the fear factor, and that's what people want you to feel. They want you to feel hopeless, fearful. But guess what? If we develop a critical mass of conscious people, we shift this like overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Consciousness is transferable.
Yes.
Once you are around conscious people, it spreads. It's like love, and that's a unifying force.
We have to
It's what they are so fearful of. That's why they try to keep us so separate.
We have to transform that consciousness into action. We have to transform that consciousness into action. But one of the most important things we can do is vote these idiots out of office.
I agree.
Because
Tony, thank you for calling.
This way I have to understand.
Tony.
You have to fire these people that are inflicting harm upon you.
How do you fire Donald Trump?
Oh, well, first of all, midterm elections are extremely important. See, people talking about 2020. You don't understand politics. Midterm elections come up November 6, 2018.
Right. And look how many Republicans are not even running.
44 House Republicans have already announced they are not running for re-election. That's just in the House. You got at least 2 in the Senate.
Wait a minute. Do you think that's
No.
Do you think that's because they figured they might lose?
Yeah, because they realized many of them. Now, some had to resign because of sexual harassment, things like this, but the majority of them realized it's going to be very hard for them to win, to gain the the financing, to run in this Trump Republican Party. Okay, because they would have to yield to his policies and develop that type of vernacular and things like this to win. And they see a loss coming. So they're taking a high road, okay? But very important. Number one, right before the break, we were talking about the media. 2 articles people need to read. Think
Well,
Progress.
actually, we left off with
Okay, go
Sturge,
ahead. Go ahead.
and we're
Go ahead.
and
Go
I
ahead.
never,
Go
and
Go ahead.
this is one show where I never make callers wait 5 and 10 minutes. I just don't,
All right.
because I'm glad that they're calling. But Sturge, so Abdullah, we're going to take your call in just a moment. But Sturge, you were talking about something that happened in Wales. You're walking down the street with your wife and your kids in Wales, over in England.
Yeah. So I had sung the night before, and so we were walking down the street in the city from the venue I was singing at, and there was a woman sitting at a bus bench, white woman, and my children and my wife crossed the street, and I was crossing after them. And as I was crossing, I was passing her, and she started yelling the N-word at me, and she was saying it loud and like screaming, and I was looking at my family to see if they heard it and they were going to turn around, and they didn't. So I was hoping they hadn't heard it. So I turned around and I looked at her, kind of threatening, like
Kind of threatening.
yeah. And
Okay. You're a long way from home now.
right.
Okay.
So I went up to my wife and I said, "Did you hear that?" She said, "Hear what?" And I said, "Okay." And I asked Camille, "Did she hear anything?" She said, "No, didn't." I asked Alyssa, and she said, "No, I didn't." So we came back, and the woman was yelling something as we were coming towards her. She was still sitting there. We were leaving the restaurant, and I walked up to her, and I just looked at her, and she started crouching like white women do. You walk past them, they grab their purse. She did that move. Now this is in Wales, England, right? And she was really afraid and whatnot. And I just kind of stared at her, and I just kept walking. But I said all that to say, no matter where I've been globally, this phenomenon exists where there's this kind of innate kind of visceral reaction to the sight of the Black
Did you
presence.
ever have a conversation with her?
Oh no.
Okay.
No.
So you just kind of scared her down and made her afraid.
Yeah, and before Mr. Imhotep talks about the 2 articles, I wanted to say the young lady called and talked about a critical mass of Black people. Now, my mother was a staunch civil rights activist. She was on fire all the time. She got a lot of things done. She created and helped create Operation Hope, not Focus Hope, Operation Hope, and they opened a mental health facility that had professionals running it, and people got mental health care at that facility. It was government funded. My mother was one of the people that got that started. And she had a lot of things done. However, I went to a lot of meetings with her through the years. I was a child, and I continue to go to meetings now. What I found over the years, the same issues persist. It's as though almost nothing has changed. And so
that's the way I'm feeling lately.
And
it's
so
like, what changed? We thought things were different.
It
but they
occurred to
weren't.
me that I need to do something in my own life, right? And it also occurred to me I can make small steps. Now it's important to get together with Black folks who think like you, so you can make some changes in your neighborhood and so forth. But I teach my 5-year-old daughter the difference between right and wrong in terms of what we're talking about, and I explain it to her in terms I hope she understands. Like I monitor her media intake or exposure. And when she's watching cartoons and has an all-white cast and the white guy saves the day and all that, I tell her to stop watching it, and I explain to her why.
Right.
And so she doesn't grow up with complexion complex, light skin, dark skin, and all these kinds of things, and good hair and bad hair. And all these things are critical. And these are small things we can do. And I'm looking for a freedom school for my daughter right now, because I don't want her to be immersed in white supremacy where it becomes too late. And when we talk about little things we can do to make a change, you can make, this is for Black folks watching right now. Like I have my Facebook on live. When you go to these Chaldean and Arab stores in every Black community on every corner, and you get your change, for example, and it's the item is 99 cents, and they say it's $1. Do something as simple as say, give me my penny.
Right, because if they do that all day, every day, all week, every month, all year, every year
after year,
they collect a lot of pennies.
That's significant. Not only that,
turns
though,
into dollars.
Not only that, though, when you say that, it's empowering. And at that point, the person realizes you are aware that you're in fact being cheated, and you want your money. Now, someone may say that's just a penny, man. But no. If it was just a penny, just like the vote, if your vote doesn't matter, then why are they trying to take your vote away? Why are they keeping the penny? All these small things have to do with big things, and also as to critical mass and Black folks coming together. I propose that this is my first time meeting Mr. Imhotep, and I've watched a lot of his videos. And
thank you.
And I've only been aware of him through Facebook and YouTube. and that he and I get together with some other people. And it doesn't always have to be about how many tens of thousands of dollars can we get together. And it may turn into that, who knows? But that we start to make some progress and some movement. And we all know about usurpers and people who come in from the government, whoever, to try to destroy it. But since he's on the air with me right now, I would like to invite him to meet with me, and maybe we can get some movement going.
Absolutely.
You know, I think it's a great idea. We're going to take a call from Abdullah.
All right.
Good evening, and thank you so much for being patient.
Oh, and thank you for taking my call. And well, the real, it's not a show. Y'all got a school. You educate people. And there's one thing I do, because I know and will take you deal with this.
Yes.
A lot of people are saying that the so-called you, the God, those people and all of this, you know, and I got a friend, he's a black dude, you know, the real dude, black, and he lived in Israel for 20 years. He got children over there. Now he left and come back. And he gave me some stories about what he went through in Israel. It's the same as we go through black people here.
Right, right. They're discriminated against by the white Jews.
That's right.
Right, yeah.
And he also, I got a book in my library. That so-called Jew was the one that owned the ships and things that didn't trade them.
Well, some of the ships, not all. Some of them were owned by just straight up Europeans. Some of the ships, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
I got the books and they were on, you know, they're place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep up the good work, okay?
All right, thanks, brother.
I'm going to sit and listen.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you. And who is this? It just says one.
I think
That's
that's one
name?
I am.
Is one I am? Okay. How you doing? Good evening.
Hey, thank you very much. And God is great. Thank y'all.
Yes.
Thank y'all for the energy and everybody. Miss Crittenton,
No.
This is Charlene Mitchell.
No, she's on last night.
Okay.
I'm Charlene Mitchell.
Okay,
Yes.
I like that better.
No, don't say you like. We want you to like both of us.
Hey, it's all love.
Right.
The universe, first of all.
Right.
Let's understand that. This whole planet is ours.
So what do you think is happening? What's happening in the world? What are we going to see? I mean, there's so much going on that's destructive. It's destroying the sanity of many people, the peacefulness of many people, because every day something new happens that interrupts our well-being.
Well, the information is here. We're the information age, and everything is on the table now, in clear view, and people are deciding. You see what I'm saying? People don't want it anymore. They see the colonization has ruined the world, you know, and by a certain factor of, you know, I don't even know what to call it, you know, but it's a negative energy, and the positive is just coming up, and you know, and it's just an energy. It's not a skin color. It's an energy.
Well, it's kind of bad energy right now.
Well, no, you can't. I mean, we're rising up. The good is rising up. It's going to be painful in a sense if you view it as pain, but I see it as greatness. The greatness is arising. You see what I'm saying? And the wickedness is falling.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
And this is coming from a dimension we don't even know about.
Well, I hope you're absolutely right. I hope you're.
You
okay.
have to have the faith in yourself to believe it.
Right.
Well, I'm speeding things along because we have
because we got another segment coming up.
We have another segment that we haven't gotten on, but thank you so much for calling. I want to hit some things, and we got to make it really fast because we want to have Sharon Freed Moreland on. She was supposed to be in our first segment with the Detroit Recreation Department, but she got held up in some things, so she got here a little late, but we're still going to let her promote her summer camp. But first of all, taking a knee, NFL. Should the president be getting involved with NFL stuff?
Absolutely not. That's a labor issue. Donald Trump should stay out of that. Donald Trump is angry because when he tried to get an NFL team in the 80s, he was blocked by the NFL owners. So then he goes to the USFL, buys the New Jersey Generals. And Trump is basically credited with bringing down the USFL. Okay, so Trump has a hatred, he has a grievance against the NFL, one. Two, he has an antipathy towards African Americans. So he should definitely not be getting involved in this. One, two, it's their First Amendment right. They are silently protesting, and he is skewing the conversation away from them, silently protesting against the oppression of African Americans, people of color, fighting against white supremacy, racism, and police brutality.
It has nothing to do with the flag and the
It's nothing to
anthem.
do with the flag. But when it came time for Donald Trump to fight for the flag that he says he loves so much, he got 5 deferments because he was too much of a coward to go fight in the Vietnam War. Okay, not number one. Number two, white people disrespect the flag on a daily basis because June 14th, 1923, the U.S. flag code was introduced. And when you read the U.S. flag code, it tells you that the flag is never supposed to be used as part of garment. Okay, so it should not be a hat, should not be a shirt, a bathing suit, a tie. Okay, it should never be used in advertising. It should not.
There's some beach towels at TJ Maxx.
Beach towel, all that violates the U.S. flag code. So white people violate the flag on a daily basis.
Juneteenth. We just had it 2 days ago. Why don't
June 19th? Yes.
A lot of people don't know what it is. If they do know what it is, they say, "So what? Why should we care about it?"
Well, we should care about it because it deals with our history. June 19th commemoration.
Should it be a celebration?
Yes, we should celebrate. Yes, we should celebrate it, but we should tie that and have a better understanding of history. Because I was just in Atlanta this past weekend for a 3-day Juneteenth celebration. Did 2 presentations down there, talked to a couple hundred people, and most people there didn't know about Juneteenth. That commemorates June 19th, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger delivers General Order Number 3 in Galveston, Texas, to let those enslaved Africans in Galveston, Texas, know that they were free. This is 2 weeks after the Civil War ended.
They've been free for a while. They didn't even know they were free.
Well, one, the Civil War ended June 2nd, 1865. It ended 2 weeks prior. They didn't know the Civil War was over. One. Two, the Emancipation Proclamation was delivered January 1st, 1863, but that did not free the enslaved Africans. As the Union troops are going through the Confederate territories, they are enforcing it and freeing them because they have the military force there. Okay, but January 1st, 1863, if you ran off that plantation, you would have been shot in the back, just like brothers and sisters being shot in the back today.
And speaking of that, the gas stations in Detroit, I'm skipping around because I want to hit all these points.
And Mississippi, by the way, did not recognize the end of slavery until 2013.
Yeah, they had to ratify the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment had to be ratified by 2/3 of the state legislature.
In Mississippi.
Right,
wow.
Right.
2013.
3/4 of the state legislature, I should say, by 2/3 majority vote. That's the ratification process. Yes.
The reason I've never been to Mississippi, I don't know, the gas stations shootings. People going in gas stations, buying these loose cigarettes, this, that, and the other.
Right.
And you've seen shootings, and then the gas station closes down for one day. There's a protest, there's a march in front of the gas station. 2 days later, they're back open, and the same people are going back to there and buying their groceries, buying their cigarettes, buying their beer, buying their apparatus to smoke weed, all this kind of stuff. And then you hear, I had a conversation about this, and the person told me, well, there's no place else for them to shop, so they have to go back there. Well, I disagree with that. What do you think? Do they have to go back there? I know the pickings are slim in some neighborhoods. There's no place to shop, and these gas stations sell everything from soup to nuts. A bunch of junk, overpriced, and treat you like crap.
This again has to do with behavior modification, I believe. There's always a choice, always. And Black folks had it a lot worse a long time ago. Not so long ago, I should say. When Black people get mistreated, this is all symptomatic as to what Mr. Imhotep was talking about. It's all symptomatic as to aggression and violence visited upon Black people through white supremacy, racism. Excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse me. And Black people can change this. We can change these things almost overnight. Redistributing the pain, as Michael was talking about.
Yes.
Not spending your money there. You don't have to go and buy some loosies. However, this has to do with consciousness, right? And if you are conscious of the situation, then you can respond to it consciously. If you're not conscious of the situation, you can't respond to it consciously. So this has to do with teaching Black people. And this for me is kind of a quandary. This is where do you gather Black people? How do you gather Black people? Do you do it through social media? How do you reach poorer Black people who are not likely to read the newspaper or to turn on the news or to do a number of things where you can reach them? How do you start to change this behavior through informational?
I'm going to really have to cram a lot in here because I want to talk about local politics in Detroit and in Michigan. There's a big, like you say, the midterm elections coming up, and the 13th district of Michigan is an open seat left open by John Conyers resigning.
Right.
And you have a host of people.
Yeah.
And I was out down by the Charles Wright Museum yesterday. I was going to a meeting at Ronald McDonald House, right? And I see a big, gigantic trailer right across the street at the grocery store across the street from the museum for Bill Wild. I mean, he has strategically placed, and he didn't start spending a lot of money early.
Running for governor.
He's running for Congress.
Oh, Congress.
Okay.
He's
the mayor. District. He's the mayor of Westland.
Okay.
And he's the only white candidate, and he's the only non-Detroiter running for that.
Right.
Because you got Ian Conyers, the other Conyers got thrown out. He's not in it. And you have Coleman Young Jr. And you have Brenda Jones.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. I didn't mean to laugh.
Yes, you did. But anyway, Brenda Jones is running.
So you're trying to, is your question, how do we determine?
Yeah, if Bill Wild wins, and he's predicted to probably win, a very good chance of winning. It'll be the first time that the 13th district has ever been represented by a non-Detroiter.
Right.
And it's just like with a white mayor. Once these things happen, do we ever get it back?
No, I don't think you get it back unless they abandon it. What we have to do is go to house.gov, which is the official website of the House of Representatives, or cbc.house.gov, Congressional Black Caucus website. Look at what the duties of a member of the House of Representatives is in the first place to understand, and then we need to match, and then we need to look at the record of the people running to see who is best positioned, who has the experience to deliver the most to us. Okay. And we need to have some standards and look at how have you helped African Americans in your previous positions? What money have you brought to the community? What have you done in your previous positions? Okay. And then look at who has who would be best suited for that 13th district to help African Americans in this community. If they can't help us, we don't need to vote for them.
Well, somebody's going to get that spot.
Yes, somebody needs to vote. Somebody needs to get it, and somebody needs to vote. But we have to understand first what are the duties of a member of the House of Representatives. What do they do?
A lot of people don't even know what the city council does.
No, I understand that.
People are
that's why I'm saying. That's why I'm directing them.
Misinformed.
That's why I'm directing people to the place where they can find out what the duties of a member of the House of Representatives is in the first place.
And that is where?
House.gov, which is the official website of the House of Representatives. House.gov, HOUSE. Okay. And you can go to cbc.house.gov, which is official. That's the website of the Congressional Black Caucus. Every member of the CBC has a page there. You can look and see what they've been doing.
Yes,
you can look and see which bills they've been sponsoring, things like this.
One more subject, and then we've got to get Sharon on. Immigration. We've seen it for the past 2 weeks. We've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children inside these big cages that they don't call them cages, but they're just big cages. And their parents are someplace else. Now we have a bunch of them that have been brought to Grand Rapids. And I'm kind of wondering, are there some special foster parents in Grand Rapids? I mean, Betsy, the DeVos people are there.
Let me
who are the people who have these little kids in Grand Rapids?
Let me say this. I do. I live in Detroit.
Yes.
I was going to say we live in Detroit. I live in Detroit.
Me too.
And I don't frequent any of these places, but if you drive down 8 Mile, which is the northern end of Detroit, before you go into other cities, all of these strip clubs are on the Detroit side.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that it's full of Eastern European strippers. And they found that a lot of these people have been trafficked or brought into the country illegally to do this for prostitution, for drugs, all kinds of things, and to strip. Listen, white folks are not concerned about those strippers on 8 Mile. White folks are concerned about they fear white genetic annihilation. That's what they fear.
Okay.
That's what this is about.
So what do you think about these kids being snatched from their parents?
Yeah, of course it's wrong.
It's wrong, and you have those coming from Central America, South America, the Caribbean. You have African immigrants coming through there, Afro-Latinos, okay? But this is one of the cornerstones of Donald Trump's campaign because he tapped into the fear of the browning of America. Yes. So many white people, he appealed to a lot of older many of them not college educated white people who feared the browning of America. And if you read this article from theatlantic.com, it was cultural anxiety that drove white working class voters to Trump. Okay, it was cultural anxiety that drove white working class voters to Trump. Read this.
Many of them are sticking with it.
Well, but the thing is, great thing about it, but 2020, he has a declining base. He has a declining base. In 2020, you're going to have 12 million 18-year-olds voting for the first time. 50% are of color. All right. So we have to understand this game that he's playing, and he's trying to appeal to his white supremacist base with these harsh immigration policies.
Well, I'll tell you, he flipped on it today, and he said, "Well, you know, I don't like this happening, but we'll see what happens."
Because it was an unexpected backlash.
We're going to take a very quick call. Leroy's on the phone. You got a minute or less. And then we got to bring Sharon on.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, but I got news for you. Those are not old white folks that Trump who support Trump. That's what. You know,
well, who are they? Who are they then?
These are young white folks, the same white folks that Reagan appealed to, who just are white and they're going for the deal. You know, we white, we're going to stick together. This is our country. The NRA, all those people they're not old white folks. These are young white folks he's appealing to. And they support. This other thing is about these people who own these stores and these strip clubs up and down 8 Mile and everywhere in our community, and who sell dope in our community. These people are Muslims for the most part. Some of them are Muslims. They're Arabic and Chaldean. These people are not our friends. These Abduls and all of these people, these Sharees and all of these people. You know, Sharee has a belief system where they actually believe in discrimination as part of their religious belief. And if he becomes governor, go and find out what the congressmen and the representatives' jobs are. But that's our media's job, and they haven't been doing it. Do you understand that? But when Diggs had that speech in the 13th congressional district, that a lot of blacks made their political career on that because Diggs had literally dropped the ball. You know, we don't hold our politicians accountable.
Oh, you're saying it now. You got it right. You got it right.
And you got one white guy. Those white folks who are gonna come out and gonna vote for Shooty, if they get crossed over, they're gonna vote for Bill Wild too. Okay? So if he's the only one, now listen, you got Conyers, Coleman Young. Those are the people that we need to be holding accountable for those seats. Because listen, this is not the Detroit when Detroit had 2 congressmen. This is a totally different situation.
It's a whole different story, and it's for a whole different show because the clock is ticking, and we have one guest who was late to the studio, but I promised her she'd get on. So
read that article I gave you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for calling. You made such great points. We're running out of time. The time just flies every Thursday.